Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to model a carabiner clip. We'll be building out our geometry using the Polygon pen. We'll also be using the Quantize in model mode. We'll be using extrude, bevel, subdivision surface, and snapping. Let's go to model layout. And I'm going to go to Shift V to bring up viewport settings. And we're going to go to front view. And let's go to your reference image. And you want to click on the back tab and this button here to bring up the reference image on your hard drive. So let's use the poly pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in a flat plane and we're just going to work our way around to build the base, the main base of our carabiner clip. So I'm just going to make one polygon, command click and drag, and I'm just going to pull this line out. If you hold down shift, you can then rotate depending if you're moving left to right. And we're just going to follow this around using this technique. And it's a little tricky. It'll take a minute to get used to using this. Command click and drag, shift, rotate, and we'll just go around making this base model. And I like working in a 2D plane because less geometry to work with, and you can just kind of get the basic feel of your model pretty quickly. And then you can just extrude, and if you need to, use the deformers to shape your model. So I'm just going to bring this up here, command click and drag, hold down shift, and then just put everything into place. Now let me go to perspective mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this outward in order to give it the depth that we need. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start shaping it and start bringing in the other components. We'll just name this either main or base. And so we have this long polygon here. One thing that I like to do is if you select these two lines and you go to commands, mesh commands, and then connect point edges, it's MM on your keyboard, and that's going to connect these two lines with another line. So if I again MM on your keyboard, that's going to connect again, and that's probably too much, so I'm just going to undo, and that should be good for our purposes. And you can do that throughout your process of modeling, and it's just a kind of a quick way to add in some lines. Okay, so now that we have this, what I can do is I can select all, and I can extrude out using D on your keyboard. You can also command click and drag outward using this blue axis band. Now you'll notice if you do that, you're going to have a hollow area here, and you'll need to make sure you have create caps on. So I'm just going to undo, have create caps checked, and then command click and whoops, try that again, extrude outward, in order to make your geometry. So as usual, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a subdivision surface. So if holding down Option and then click will automatically put our main into our subdivision surface. And you can see how this is looking. If I bring up our lines, NB on your keyboard, you can see our geometry. Let me uncheck that for a second, and if you need to, you can make adjustments, UL, and it's a good idea to go back to our reference, and let's go to line mode, and if you need to rotate, pull this up a little bit, and just kind of space out our geometry a little bit if you need to. And I'm just going to pull this up, rotate this around. And just take a look at our reference. I think it's very important to always use a reference when modeling. Even if it's just a drawing, I think it will save you a lot of designing on the fly, which I tend to do. Let me select this loop. Just kind of pull this down, see what's going on here. Accidentally selected the axis manipulation. And so I really do believe that using a reference will definitely save you a little bit of time. Okay, so now that I have this area, what I want to do is I want to put another line, a loop cut, all the way in the center of our geometry, of our main geometry that we have. So KL is going to bring up our loop cut, and I'm just going to put a cut in here. Let's go 50%. And we're going to do another one on this side as well. So put a cut there, and then I'm going to type in 50%. Make sure that's right in the middle. And so in this case, what I can do is I can go to UL, select our loop, and I can deselect these ones on the edge of our model. T on our keyboard, and we're just going to pull this out. Now you can be very precise if you hold down Shift. That's going to pull that out in 10%. And you can pull this, excuse me. And that's on both sides. Now what you can do is go to UL, make another loop selection on the other cut that we did. I'm also going to hold down Control on your keyboard and deselect these lines. And then same basic thing, I'm going to pull this out. Oops, excuse me. Okay, this is a situation where if I pull in this way, I'll be pulling in on the other end. So I'm gonna have to do one at a time, unless you like this particular effect where it's pulling in on this side. I'm gonna keep it symmetrical on all sides. So I'm just going to hold down Control. First, I want to undo the adjustment that I made. I'm just going to deselect these lines. So T, holding down Shift, now also keep in mind you may have to adjust from this axis as well. And I'm not holding down Shift in this case, I just want to kind of eyeball this. Okay, we're looking pretty good. And now what I want to do is I want to select these I want to select these lines that I had before. So I'm going to go to loop selection, and then what I'll do is I'll deselect these lines. And do the same resizing. Let's make sure everything is selected. And I'm going to deselect these guys, and there's one here. So a little bit of back and forth, T on the keyboard, and I'm just going to pull this in. And again, just kind of eyeball this direction. So as you can see, we can quickly make the shape that we want. Now you can certainly make a cylinder. Say you make a cylinder in this angle and then extrude out going along. You could certainly do it that way. So now that I have our, let me go to our front view. Now that I have this geometry made, let's make some geometry here for this latch or this swing piece of metal that's going to connect the two, this loop, and close this loop. So I was thinking about a couple of different ways I can build this geometry. And it's really kind of the aesthetic that you want for your model. You could make it just using a cylinder. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what I would like to do is go to UL, bring up our loop selection. Let's go to Polygon mode. And I want to select this loop of polygons. So let's try something. Let's go UP, and that's going to split off this polygons to its own object. And if I go to model mode, pull this out, and I can then extrude, or I can resize. If I go to E, I can transform this out or move this into position. And you can also look into your reference, get a good idea of where this is. And I can just transform this, pull this out, and kind of rotate this, get this into a position. The reason why I'm doing this way is that I'm already in the angle that I want. I'm already in the position that I want. So I don't have to do as much manipulation. Now you can see these, it's a little rough, especially at the top here. So I'm gonna go line mode, UL for loop selection, T on your keyboard, and we're just gonna pull this down, holding down shift until you get to 0. That flattens that out, that top loop. We're gonna do the same thing down here, T, holding down shift, we'll get to 0, and it flattens that out. Okay, so I need the reference, so let's take a look at a reference. And maybe I want to pull this up a little bit more. E on our keyboard, move this into position. Let me just make this a little bit bigger and rotate this slightly into position. Now you'll notice that this is bigger than what I have here in terms of our reference. And that might be okay. We can get away with making this a little bit more symmetrical in terms of the width of our main base. And if we have to make it a little bit smaller, that's not a problem. So I have this main thing, I'll just call this swing. And as you can see from we have this little screw, this little bolt that allows this part to swing inward in order to open up our loop. So we're gonna have to make a hole for both areas. But before I do that, and you can't really see in this reference, but these two ends, let me hide our swing. These two ends need to be tapered in order to allow our swing motion to occur. So what I'm going to do is go back to main, and I'm going to select this loop, so UL on the keyboard, and let's hold down shift and flatten this out to 0. I'm going to do the same thing to this end here. Get that down to 0. It's just so it's at a flat position. And so what I can do is select these polygons. D, we'll pull this out, and let me zoom around a little bit, flatten in this direction, and then D, pull this out again, and let me go back to our reference. And I feel like this needs to be pulled up. So what I'm going to do is, with polygon selected, and if I have to melt one of these lines, I can do that. I can even transform if I need to in order to get this back up to here. Let me go to our perspective mode. So yeah, we're getting a little bunched up here, so I'm just going to UL this and let's see, maybe melt this. Use Z on your keyboard. And we got these points here. Let me undo. Let's dissolve this instead of melt. So I like how this is. I just want this to be a little longer. Right now it's just kind of very short. So I want to go back to our front view. And let me deselect these polygons. Sure, tolerance selection is checked, and what I can do is with these lines selected, and just gonna pull this up a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now I want to do the same thing here. But I want to make sure, let me go to Polygon mode. What I want to make sure is that I don't do the same situation that I did at the top. Let me flatten this out, and let's pull this down. So front view. Okay, so now I know that I want to pull this up. D on the keyboard, and let's pull this all the way up to here. And I'm gonna have to make a line cut, a loop cut for this bolt. So let's take a look how this looks. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. Let's put in that bolt since I'm looking at it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to put a cut right here. And I'm going to select this point. Let's go to perspective mode. And I'm going to select this point in the back here. And MS is going to bring up your bevel tool, and it's going to make this nice diamond shape for our hole. And I just want to go to polygon mode, select this polygon and this polygon, delete. And what we can simply do is bridge. Hold on, actually, let me undo. Before I delete, I want to give it an inner extrude. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I have this built in, this loop, this loop that we have here for our subdivision surface. So let's delete that. B to bridge. Make sure I'm in line mode and bridge this. And what we can do is KL for our loop cut. I'm just going to put in a cut here and here in preparation for our subdivision surface, so we can have a nice edge. And I'll put in the subdivision surface, and you can see we have this nice edge for our bolt. Now, I guess what you could do you know, you could, before you made these cuts, you could maybe select that quad, that polygon, and then extrude that out. But I'm just going to bring in a cylinder. Make sure I'm in plus Z. Now, for caps, you certainly could keep the caps and have like a fillet cap. I really hate these poles and these polygons, so I'm gonna delete that cap or uncheck that cap, and I'm just gonna put in 8 for rotation. Something about that just bugs me, so I'm gonna keep that and keep the triangles off and not have a cap. And I'm just gonna resize this. Put this into position. And you can use this little dot here. That's going to resize it. You can use this dot here to shrink it, shrink the height. And it looks like we're a little bit off here. We can go to front view, that helps. Oops. And it's going to pull this back a little bit. Let me rotate around. And so, looks like it's a pretty good size. I'm just going to name this bolt, screw, something like that. And now what I'll do is I'm going to close that hole. So let's make this editable. Close that polygon hole, MD. It's going to close that out. Let me get this other side. KK. And let me go to point mode. I'm just going to put a line here. Escape. Put a line here. Escape. So now we have our 1, 2, 3, 4. We have quads. And now we have quads on this side. So now if you what you want to do is if you want to select these polygons and you want to give it that fillet cap look, you can go to inner extrude. Let me select our other side on this one, holding down shift. You can do inner extrude and holding down T on this axis, pull this out, and maybe you want to do it again, inner extrude, T in this direction, pull this out. So you can have your fillet cap, and if this needs to be pulled out again, that's not a problem. So let me go subdivision surface. Oh, I made a mistake. Make sure you have all of your components in a null. So I'm going to bring this into a null, and I'll name this Carabiner. Oh, too many E's. Clip. And you can put all your geometry all your objects, and then put that into the null, and then put your null into the subdivision surface. Skipped one step. So we have this part, and it's looking pretty good. Everything looks good here. Some strange geometry going on here. We see a little bit of Fong issues. Let me go to the main. We turn off use edge breaks, maybe adjust our, let me go to select all. Maybe I need to you know, give this an extra, let me give you a loop here, UL, let me MS, give it a bevel. Maybe that will help that a little bit. It looks like we're having some issue here. Do I have a, oops, let me select these polygons, select hide. Yeah, we have this, when I extruded, made a cap, so I'm gonna delete that. Select unhide all. So we bring in our subdivision surface, and that cleans that up a little bit. And let me select this here. Select, hide selected. Yep, got another one in here. So that was a mistake on my part. Select unhide all. And we have smoother transitions. Probably have one down on here too as well. So just be mindful when you're making extrusions. It's something I've can get a little lazy. Unhide all. Get a little lazy about and forget to make sure I don't have crate caps on. So I'm liking the way this looks. Let me bring in our swing component, and let's turn off subdivision surface. And so what I want to do now is what I do want to do is I want to add in some geometry here. So I'm going to go to KL, put a cut here. Let's go to 50%, make this precise, UL. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MS for bevel. Let's go to 1. And let's go to about here. I think that will be okay. And I want to add in I want to subdivide this geometry here. Select mesh, commands, subdivide. Let's get this little gear here. And we're going to make a subdivision. Let's turn on smooth subdivision with one subdivision. And what I want to do is I want to select these polygons. Let's go to polygon mode. Whoops, excuse me. Select these polygons here on this side. Select these guys here and just follow down select these polygons on the bottom and follow this row, shift, select these guys and just delete. And what I want to do is I want to bridge this. So B, let's make sure I'm in line mode. Bridge this here, bridge this here, bridge here, and you can turn off your main so you can see. Bridge that there. Bridge here and here. Whoops, made a mistake. Pull that there, and we'll close this up. MD, bring up close polygon hole, and we'll adjust those lines there. We'll also have to make a hole for this, for a little bolt. So I want to bridge B, bridge here, 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 and just like on the other one, and this could have been in a symmetry too, but I think we're okay. Okay, so let's bring it in main. And so you can see where we're going here with this, with our geometry. Now I can pull this down. Let's go to our reference. And let's take a look at how this lines up. This is pretty much on point. Let me go to perspective mode. Let me go to UL. And I'm going to select this loop. Let me go to front view. So yeah, we're pretty much almost right on the money with our reference. But we do need to make a hole for this bolt. And let's go to point mode. Select this point. And so we know we're going to have to make a hole right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to front view. And I'm going to go to rectangle selection. And I'm just going to make it a rectangle here. And what this should do is select our 2 points. And it does. So we have our front and our back. And let me go back to our front view, MS. Do the same thing as we did before. We're going to build this, I'm going to pull this out. It did not make the... Let me try again. MS. Now, there's a couple issues with this. What I'm getting is a geometry that I'm not particularly liking. So we could do a couple of things here. We could go KL, or actually UL, MS, let me go to line mode, sorry. MS, and let's square this up. we can select these polygons, inner extrude. Let me go to front view. Let me zoom in a little bit and inner extrude, and we know that this is going to be our hole. So we could delete. And actually what I want to do is keep in mind that I want to have this side as well. So KL, oh, I'm sorry, actually UL, MS, and let's see if we can line this up in our front view. Okay, get that pretty close. And let's go to perspective mode, polygon mode. And let me make sure I get this right. Okay, that looks right. And inner extrude, pull this in and delete. Let's put in subdivision surface, see how we're looking here. And so what I'm going to have to do is also make a hole in our inside as well. You can also just, let's make sure we're in model mode, T. And I don't like that because what's happening is it's going to get stretched. So I'm going to pull this out. This bolt, and I'm going to KL, put a loop. Let's go 50%. UL. I'm going to select that MS. And I'm going to make this subdivision 0. Oops. And what I can do is I can go to our rectangle selection. Let's go to these polygons here. Make sure I got everything right. And I could just pull this out. Let's go to subdivision surface, and I'm not liking so what I don't like is this hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to front view. And I'm going to, let's go to Shift V. I want to bring down this transparency. It's just too much for me. And I want to hide some stuff. I want to, let me hide the main. And what I want to do is deselect our subdivision surface. And what I want to do is I want to connect, not connect, but I want to line up our points with our bolt. So the way that we do that, in order to make this hole a lot more of a circle, because right now it's just we're getting this square look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this, go to point mode, and I want to go to enable snap. I'm just going to peel this off. I'm just going to enable snapping, and we're going to make sure vertex snap is selected. Pull this over here for a second. And so let's select our points, point mode, and we want to make sure we're in our swing. Okay, so I want to select the points for this side and the rear, or the other side. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle around this point. Let me go to perspective mode. Just make sure that we're in a good spot. And so we do have both points selected. And that's going to snap to this bolt point. And we're going to do that for all of our points here. I'm just going to snap it into place. So it's good to get yourself into positions where you need to, you kind of paint yourself in a corner and you're like, okay, how am I going to get out of this one? And that's how you learn. That's how you figure things out. And we're going to pull this right into the center here. Oh, actually, that's just the other side, so we don't have to worry about that. So you kind of figure things out. Let me look here and see how that looks. And we got this other side. We can go into this inside as well, but I don't think it's important for our purposes. Let's go to subdivision surface and see how that looks. Now, what I do want to do, let me clean up some of these points, optimize. Now, what I do want to do is KL, and let's get this loop here. And I can close this and take off our snapping. And I just want to make sure that we're looking good here. And let me turn off our bolt. Let's make this loop. Actually, let me go to line mode. D. And we'll bring this in, pull this in, and transform. And let's do another extrude. Pull this in, transform. That way we have this nice edge for our subdivision surface. And then when we bring in our bolt, that will be connected. Let's do the same thing on our other side. KL, or UL, D, E, bring this in, D extrude again, transform, and let's put in a KL for a loop cut. Just put a little cut there. Okay. And our main and our bolt. So we're looking pretty good. Only issue that I see is this doesn't quite line up. Let's go to main. And what we can do is we can pull this into position. Get that into a better spot. Also, we have some of these lines that we can make some adjustments here as well. So let's go to our swing, KK. Let's put in a line here. Let me turn off our main so we can see what we're doing. And we can do this in top view. Maybe that helps, maybe not. Pull this down. Connect here. And so we have quads here. We'll do the same thing up top, down here. Whoops, sorry. Let's fix that. And let's just pull this around. So we got a point here. I'm just going to delete that. And so I just want to kind of maybe clean up these points a little bit, space these out a little bit better. Got another point here. Delete that. And so I want to select these points, maybe pull these over a little bit. Just kind of space this out a little bit nicer. I just wanted to make sure that I have quads in this top area. Okay. So the last thing that I want to do is put a little this twisting component to the carabiner clip. And we're just going to bring this into we'll just bring a cylinder in. And let's go 16 rotation segments. Let's turn off our caps. Let's bring down the size, the height. And again, let's go to our reference. Should be pretty good, maybe a tad wider. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's turn some things off here. Let's turn off our bolt, our main swing component. And let's put in some rotation or some height segments. Okay, so I want to make sure that I have these lines for the rotation segment a little tighter and not completely square. So let's try 17 rotation segments. And I'm going to make this editable. Let's select our points. MS is going to bring up our bevel. And what I want to do is see how this is not quite connecting. So I'm a little too much. I have a little too much space here. So I had it at 17. Let's try 16. I just want to get this correct. And it looks like I need one more point. So I'm just undoing back. Let's go to 15 rotation segments. Make that editable. Select all in point mode with our bevel tool selected. Pull this out. Try to get this pretty close. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want these diamond shapes and these points to connect as close as possible. So when I put in this into a connect object, so you go to right over here and choose this connect object. We're going to put our cylinder into our connect. That's going to connect these points. And you'll have to adjust your tolerance a little bit. So just bump that up to 1. And it's going to connect these points. So you select your connect object, make that editable. And now what you can do is you can select all your points. And we're going to go to Mesh Commands, Subdivide. And we're going to have, and what that does is it gives us our subdivisions, but it still allows us to have these points selected. So if I go to T on our keyboard, say I want to pull these out, well, the issue is that it's not being pulled out in uniformly from center, because I'm pulling out in all directions. So what I want to do is I want to pull it out in the X and the Z direction. So I pull this out in this direction, and I can hold down Shift, and I'll get 10-degree increments. Hold down this direction, hold down Shift in 10-degree increments. And now I'm getting the position that I want. It's uniformly in the XZ plane. So maybe that's a little too much. If you feel that's a little too spiky, what you can do is you can use Quantize, So if you go to Mode, Model, or Modeling, and you have this Quantize tab, scaling you can have at 5%, and we'll enable Quantize. So when I move in this position, it snaps to, you can see that 105% in the Z-axis, and again in the X-axis. So it's really good to use Quantize when you want to get some very precise movements. I'm going to disable Quantize. Okay, so what I can do is I can go to UL and let's select our boundary loop. I'm just going to extrude this up, pull this in, de-extrude one more time. Let's pull this down, extrude, pull this down. Do the same thing on this side, at the bottom side. De-extrude. Oh, excuse me. T. Extrude again. And pull this in. Extrude that one more time. Pull that up. So now we have this selected. I can go to front view and I can go to rectangle selection. I can select these. Actually, let me go to UB. Actually, that should be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MS. Let's zoom in a little bit and bring this out so we have this bevel. Yeah, that was the only issue that I saw. Okay, let me undo. I didn't want these lines selected. So let me go around and deselect these lines on the top and bottom. Okay, so I have these lines selected. I deselected these vertical lines. MS on your keyboard. Let me zoom in a bit. And now allow me to have a bevel. And what that's going to do is that's going to sharpen up these edges. And I'm just going to name this Twisty. Pop this into our Carabiner clip. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a little, with this render, you can see this is a little bit sharper as opposed to when it didn't have the bevel, and it just gives it more of a texture, something that's a little bit more grippier when you're trying to twist this to lock this carabiner. Okay, so let's turn everything back on. And the last thing I want to do is just put this into position. So I can go to our front view, grab our Twisty, and I've lost my axis, so I can just enable axis, center, pull this back here, disable that, and then rotate this into position. and probably have to go to perspective mode and make sure that we are in pretty good shape. May have to go with a few different views and make sure that we're lined up correctly. So all in all, it's a very simple, it seems like a very simple object, but we have a few little details that require a little bit of attention and to get the ideas and the concepts you want, like using Quantize, using the bevel, using the Polygon pen. This is intersecting a little bit, so I can I can simply go to our line mode, UL. Make sure you check out Quantize in order to help you get more precise. Let me make sure I got that as well. Okay, that looks good. And then let me bring back our main and our swing just to see where we are. Let me go up to top view and let's kind of transform this. %. And yeah, the Quantize I find to be really good if you want to get things pretty precise. And so check that out and definitely experiment. And this was just one design that I was thinking of. You can try different designs with the bevel tool, using subdivide, and you can try different ideas. You can make this a little bit more detailed if you want. This was just pretty much for experimental and just kind of showing you guys how this works. And so let's put the subdivision surface back on. And so what we have is our Carabiner clip. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.